ضحيت وقصر الثوب وبكي فقلب دين الله بقلوب.
It's the largest slum in Iraq. A breeding ground for disaffection and radicalism. A place of fierce religiosity, yearning for the Americans to go and the Messiah to come. Fortress of a firebrand, America believes, has helped set the country ablaze. The outside world usually sees the Baghdad suburb of Sadr City when its enemies attack, after atrocities like the suicide bombings that killed at least 160 people there last November. It's rare to hear how its nearly 3 million citizens, overwhelmingly poor and Shiite, live with death day in, day out.
The mosques don't have enough coffins to hold funerals. They need more.
We are a republic of widows and orphans.
People like to watch war films, the ones about fighting against Americans.
If you fancy curling up in front of a good video in Sadr City, this is the best you can get. The Shiite answer to Cliff Richard, with a musical tribute to the Mahdi army. The black-shirted Shiite militia who defend the sprawling suburb. They've killed American and British troops, murdered Sunnis in revenge attacks. But their leader, Muqtada al-Sadr, now condemns violence. His reputation as a champion of the underdog and his nationalist message give him more power than guns ever could. But his deputies have to be sure they can defend themselves. Dr. Maha al-Mahdi, mother of 2 young children, trained as a biochemist, isn't a natural pistol packer, but she's one of the few Iraqi MPs who insists on living outside the heavily fortified green zone in the centre of Baghdad, so she needs protection. Luckily, her husband doubles up as her bodyguard. He's also her secretary. So who looks after the children?
Their aunt takes care.
Their aunt takes care of them.
I told you we were divorced. Only joking. I enjoy what I'm doing.
We leave the children with their aunt and she looks after them till we return. When I come home, work continues. I meet constituents and listen to their complaints. We are on the jihadi path to liberate Iraq. Me, my children, my family, my husband, we are all sacrifices to Iraq.
Hasn't Abu Nur sacrificed his traditional status as an Arab male?
These jobs I do, looking after the children, or even cooking when the doctor comes home from work. What I like about them is that it's God's work. As long as she's doing this jihadi work, if it pleases God, I am with her from morning till night, and I don't think of anything else, because our goal is one.
Even the mobile phone repeats that goal. It's programmed to sing, "Get out America, get out, oh Satan." All the squalor and poverty Dr. Maha sees in her constituency, she blames on what she calls the occupation.
Notice that this is the main street. It's not a village street, it's the main street in the city, but it does not get the level of services it needs. The pavements are not paved and the houses are very basic, even though Iraq is an oil state and has immense resources. But all of this is because of the occupation.
Promises of development have been broken, she says, and so have promises of security. Even on her home turf, she travels in a 2-car convoy. Dr. Maha's come to visit a school for Shiite girls whose mothers or fathers have been killed in the violence of the last 4 years. It's in one of the poorest districts in the suburb. The Americans have spent $64 million since 2003 to bring new sewers, power lines and other services to Sadr city, but improvements around here are hard to spot. Most of the pupils have fled here with relatives from other more dangerous parts of Baghdad or from beyond the capital.
Window!
They've been found places at the school by Muqtada al-Sadr's men. The black headscarves are a sign that this girl's lost a parent very recently.
My mother cannot talk to us about my father's death. When my little sister asks, she tells her he's gone out to buy bananas for us.
Through the suffering in this one room, you can gauge the whole unplumbed depth of Iraq's nightmare. There's been killing of every kind, targeted, random and accidental.
We have a girl called Batul. Her father was killed by an American officer. There's another girl called Amal. Her father was killed on the way to Amman by the terrorists. And there is this other girl called Hayan, and her father was killed in the A'dhamiyya district in a sectarian killing. We call it murder by identity card. And another who is called Hanan, whose father was martyred in a terrorist explosion in Sadr city, where he was working as a building laborer, and he was standing in the middle of a crowd of laborers and was killed there.
Dr. Maha promises to lobby for more funds for the school. Some of the girls' families, she says, live on only $1 a day. But Sadr City is a constituency where almost everyone's in need. It was built as Revolution City back in the late 1950s, on land given mainly to poor Shiite families who'd migrated from the south of Iraq. Saddam renamed it after himself, Saddam City, but he and his Sunni elite weren't prepared to spend much money on it. Now it's called Sadr City, after Muqtada's father, Grand Ayatollah Muhammad Sadiq al-Sadr, a revered cleric murdered, probably on Saddam's orders, in 1999. Shiites, the majority in Iraq, are free now to honour their heroes and martyrs. But letters like this leave them feeling as persecuted as ever. It's a death threat, signed by Sunni extremists, that's forced a family of Shiite farmers to flee here from their home in Diyala, northeast of the capital. Here, where Sadr City meets the desert, ever more makeshift homes are being thrown up by refugees running for their lives.
They send water here once a month. Why should our children take a bath only once a month? A tanker brings the water. Luckily, we don't have to pay for it. But when it doesn't come, the children don't even have drinking water. So how could they possibly have a bath?
Every day, he says, another dozen or so shelters are built, housing a few more of the 4 million Iraqis, perhaps 1 in 7 of the population, who are currently displaced from their homes.
Look at these clay bricks. People live inside here despite the scorpions and snakes that come out of them. And look at this one. They just stopped building this house because there was not enough money.
They can bring only a few remains of their former lives, but they never forget the portraits of the founders of Shiism. This woman got away only after another martyr was added to the roll call, her husband Ahmed. He was taken away one night by unknown men in masks. Next day, his corpse was found on a bridge.
He was a good husband. He didn't have any connection to all of these things. I am still shocked he was killed. I don't know why they killed him. Now what shall I do with 4 children? I can't provide for them. There's no wages. No one to ask how I'm going to manage. No one cares. I don't know. Who can I talk to? These 4 children deprived of their father. Why? What is my life now? What is their life? No wages, no breadwinner, no one to take care of them.
Death now provides the only growth industry in Sadr city. Abu Taysir runs a small joinery company that once specialised in furniture for newly married couples. Now orders for wardrobes are getting rarer, but the design of a coffin isn't so different.
Because of the current situation in our country, with more explosions and bombings, we have more killings than marriages. We estimate that now you need 10 times as many coffins as before. We used to have 2 rivers in Iraq, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now we have a 3rd river which I call the Red River because of all the bombings and killings.
Those who've lost relatives come here to an office run by Muqtada al-Sadr's organisation for the support that's often unavailable from the state. It's a battle for hearts and minds, more successful than any the Americans have waged here. A parallel social services network reminiscent of what that other Shiite organisation, Hezbollah, has developed in Lebanon. It was Grand Ayatollah al-Sadr who first developed a system to help the needy. Muqtada was his youngest son, far inferior to his father in learning, but able to inherit much of his authority. Dr. Maha grew up in a mixed family. Her father was Sunni. It was while she was at university that she converted to Shiism, encouraged by the young calligrapher who wrote out her dissertation and became her husband. He was an enthusiastic adherent of Sadr Senior.
We haven't found anyone to fill the place of Muhammad Sadiq al-Sadr. That man changed my life. He taught me the truth of God, may he be praised, the truth of Islam. I was lost before I found him.
Bad weather can't deter the faithful from turning out for Friday prayers in Sadr city. It's a religious duty. But following the tradition set by Muqtada's father, the sermons here are resolutely political.
The people demand that the occupiers leave by their own volition.
That's Muqtada's line. He's the only Shiite politician who's consistently opposed the US presence. He had 6 ministers from his party in the government, but he's pulled them out because there's no timetable for US withdrawal.
We come to Friday prayers to say no to Americans.
But these worshippers don't just want political liberation. They want redemption. The blessed era that will be ushered in by the second coming of the Mahdi, the Shiites' mysterious lost imam after whom Muqtada's army is named. Some believe he'll appear imminently, maybe right here in Sadr city, and they're convinced that it was to stop him that America, egged on by Israel, invaded their country.
The occupiers are in Sadr city to fight Imam Mahdi, to blockade his bases and followers, because they knew that anyone who went out of this city would go to fight the Americans.
It's a notion Muqtada's father held dear, that an evil trinity of America, Israel and Britain is behind all the world's troubles. But it must have been severely tested by last year's explosion at one of the holiest Shiite shrines in Iraq. The golden-domed Al-Askari Mosque in Samarra, a coldly calculated attempt to ignite war between Muslim and Muslim. It was the work almost certainly of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, a network of foreign Arab fighters and die-hard officials of Saddam's regime. We're going to meet one man who miraculously escaped death at their hands, a male nurse abducted from a taxi along with 3 other Shiite passengers. The gang, apparently an Iraqi, a Syrian and an Egyptian, wanted revenge for the execution by the government of Barzan al-Tikriti, Saddam's half-brother. They chose their first victim from among the captives and prepared to sacrifice him.
There was an Egyptian with them who was in charge of slaughtering people. He was holding a piece of metal made from a tin can in the shape of a cleaver with a very sharp edge. He made one of the hostages lie down and cut his throat. We all fainted when we saw all that blood gushing out. Then they took another one of us and did the same to him. They told me that the time for my execution would be 3:30 because this was the time that Barzan al-Tikriti was executed.
It was Hussein, he believes, who saved him. The 7th century Shiite saint came to him that night in a dream, and next morning he was inexplicably freed. But horror stories like that won't change Dr. Maha's views. Al-Qaeda, she says, is just a tool of the Pentagon.
America, Britain and Israel are financing the terrorists to hit the Iraqi people. Terrorists couldn't do this without the occupiers.
But the terrorists kill a lot of Americans too. They don't only kill Iraqis, they kill a lot of Americans.
How many did they kill?
3,500.
No problem for the protection of Israel. It's not many. I warned the American people that our enemy and theirs is one, the Jews.
But American forces, pursuing more straightforward logic, are fighting a real enemy, sectarian death squads, in their last-ditch effort to bring security to Baghdad. Since the beginning of the so-called surge, they've raided Sadr city almost every night, searching sometimes for Mahdi army fighters. And usually there's been no serious resistance. Muqtada ordered his men to lie low. His followers insist the Americans are hitting the wrong targets, including Sadr city's main children's hospital.
This is where the American vehicle stopped. See that car parked there? And they carried on firing at the hospital. We reached here and saw them and immediately went back. We were afraid they would see our weapons and fire. We heard the screams of the women upstairs, so we rushed there.
He says the shooting started at 3:30 in the morning and lasted an hour and a half. Had there been a baby in this incubator, it would barely have escaped death.
We were sleeping here in the hospital, and we heard shots being fired. Their traces are here. Afterwards, the room became full of smoke, and we ran away.
The American-led multinational forces say they have no record of any incident here on that date. And you'd think there'd be sympathy with America here. It supplies the hospital with medicine and equipment, and there was a $3 million grant from Washington to renovate the building. But the deputy director's still dissatisfied.
The Americans always lie. We met them when building started 2 years ago. And they made lots of big promises to us, like that we would be a model hospital. We made a few simple requests, for example a consulting clinic and a thalassemia ward and an outpatients clinic. They agreed at first, but after a few months they broke their promises and didn't deliver anything.
For now, every extra bit of anti-American resentment flows into Muqtada's bid for power. He's one of the few Iraqi politicians who's posed as a national leader, aiming to bring Shiites and Sunnis together. But for all his nationalist rhetoric, it's not clear what he can offer the people of Sadr city or Iraq.
Our demands are clear and are in the interests of the Iraqi people. We want a timetable for the withdrawal of American troops to drive away the oppressors and improve services for Iraqi citizens. None of that's been achieved until now. We don't have any other demands related to our personal interests or ministerial portfolios. Nothing.
But Sadr cities see no useful laws produced by the parliament she belongs to, and her party's withdrawal from the government leaves it even less representative or able to function. Back in the school she visits, they're learning words many of them no longer have much use for in their own families.
Father, mother, sister, brother.
The state provides a small daily treat. It can't provide the security to stop schools filling up with more orphans. Dr. Maha, as usual, blames the Americans and looks forward to the Islamic government of the Mahdi. But that's a dream that's unlikely to replace Sadr city's nightmare anytime soon.
وبجفك حيلت يا مقتدانا وراسك للكفر لا ما حنيته وراسك للكفر لا ما حنيته
يا صدر بالدم شريته